Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. First, welcome to the Content Marketing Best Practices on LinkedIn webcast. And thanks for joining us in the middle of a busy month as we wrap up the year. Let's start off with introductions. If I can get my presentation to move forward. There we are. So my name is Jamie Pham. My LinkedIn profile says Jamie Stevens Pham because LinkedIn hyphenates or puts in brackets everybody's maiden name, but Jamie Pham. I work for LinkedIn. I've been with LinkedIn for almost 6 years, and my role is as a content marketing consultant is designed to help companies understand what their audiences are looking to engage with on LinkedIn and how to get the most out of their content creation and distribution efforts on the platform. I'm joined today by a special guest. I'm excited to introduce Chris Peters, who is at Intel, and we've been working together for the whole year. So Chris and I have been working together for a while. Chris, I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself and what you do.
Hey, thanks, Jamie. It's great to be here today. So again, my name is Chris Peters. I'm with Intel. I've been with Intel going on 15 years now. That whole time I've been working with enterprise IT technology, and I'm currently the global social media strategist that's focused on business-to-business communication with IT decision makers as my primary audience.
Awesome. So super excited to have Chris here. I talk to a lot of companies about their strategy and their organization, but there's so much value in actually hearing from the people that do it day in and day out. There's just so many nuances that you learn, so I'm excited to have him here. So a few housekeeping items before we get started. The first is Chris is going to be with us until about the 40-minute mark, and then he has to jump off. So we will be able to field some Q&A throughout the presentation, and anything that we don't get to, we have a pretty robust Q&A time slot allotted at the end. When you want to submit a question, please use the Q&A panel within the WebEx application. There are two places to submit questions or comments. One is Q&A, one is chat. If you put it into Q&A, we'll be able to better monitor it and also create a transcript afterwards for follow-up. Another piece of housekeeping, we have Twitter handles and a hashtag at the bottom of these slides. So I'm at JamieLynn09, Chris is at Chris_P_Intel, and the hashtag is LinkedIn Content. So because Chris was unable to join us the entire time, if you have any questions for him directly, he's opened up his Twitter handle to address anything after the webcast, and I will as well. Finally, this is being recorded, and the recording and the presentation will be sent around after the event is over. If you want to share it with friends or colleagues, or just if you miss something throughout the presentation or want to look back. And I think that should be just about everything for now, so let's get started. This is the agenda for today. I like to present an executive summary up front because I know not everybody is able to join for the full hour, and I want to make sure everybody that dials in this morning has something that they can walk away with, no matter how long they're able to stay. And then I'm going to turn it over to Chris, and he's going to share with us kind of his top 5 lessons that he's learned from his work on the Intel IT Center Showcase page on LinkedIn. We'll talk broad strokes about what types of content on LinkedIn work, and then we'll get tactical, super tactical, with top tips for compelling updates. I'll share some case studies. We'll wrap it up with key takeaways, and then we'll close with Q&A. So this is my executive summary for today. Now, the invite went out to company page admins, so most of the people on the phone have access to the company page and are sending updates or are running direct sponsored content campaigns. And so my focus today will be on company updates, both organic and sponsored. I work with clients that run sponsored update campaigns, so there will be tips for sponsoring and paying for distribution and getting the most out of your budget as well. But basically, company updates and sponsored updates on LinkedIn are not just native ads. They should be thought of as native content, which means it's content marketing first. It just happens to be delivered in a native ad format. And in order to be truly native, the content that you're putting out there has to match the tone and context of the rest of the content that's in the LinkedIn ecosystem, which means it has to be professional, it has to be helpful, and it has to be aspirational. People are on LinkedIn in order to be better at what they do and to grow their career, and they're looking for inspiration and they're looking for insights. So if you can deliver inspiration and insights in an innovative way, you're going to knock it out of the park. Sounds easy, very hard to do in practice, but if you kind of go with that direction in mind, you'll kind of end up in the right place. And then finally, from a tactical perspective, when you're crafting an update, be concise and be mobile friendly. More than half of sponsored update engagement comes from mobile devices, so you should always be thinking mobile first when you're putting your updates together. And that includes your copy, your image, your call to action, and especially the landing page experience. So with that said, I want to dig in really fast into what content marketing is, because we have a pretty wide variety of job titles and descriptions attending today's session. The Content Marketing Institute defines content marketing as delivering information that makes your buyer more intelligent. So educating and informing and creating that relationship and earning the right to sell. Because you are trying to earn the right to sell with content marketing, there's a general rule of thumb in content marketing, especially social content, called the 4-1-1 rule or the 80-20 rule. And that simply means that for every post that you do put out there about your brand, product, or company, you should put at least 4 things out there that are not about you. For those that are actually in the WebEx application, the 3 posts that you see here on this slide are all examples of top sponsored updates from throughout the year. And they're from completely different companies aimed at completely different audiences. But the reason these all did so well is because if you look at the copy, it's not about the brand. It's about the audience. It's about the member. And it's about making them more informed, intelligent, and simply more productive and successful. Even the middle example from Burst, well, it probably is a direct response campaign, and it probably does lead to some research report with a lead gen form attached to it. The update itself is simply designed to be informational. It's talking about the Gartner Magic Quadrant, which for B2B marketers, especially in tech, is a kind of a big deal. And they're probably in the Magic Quadrant, but they're not promoting themselves at all in the post. They're simply targeting it to the right audience and putting it in the context that's designed to be helpful, and it works. So that's my number 1 rule in company and sponsored updates is you got to earn the right to talk about yourself, and you got to be helpful and build that relationship. And with that note, this is the perfect time to turn it over to Chris so that he can start talking about kind of the top 5 things that he's learned throughout his time working with LinkedIn.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jamie. And actually, Jamie's really spot on with this. And, as a marketing professional, our jobs are to get our message out and across to our audience. And so it is extremely hard to do what Jamie just said, which sounds really easy. Give back one. And so, when I think about this I don't ever think that we're trying to sell. I actually think we're trying to help. And so from that standpoint, I think about empathy. Really understanding your audience, their pain points, their personality, and try to talk with them and not at them. And again, here are some 2 examples that we did. And again, it's about us offering things in both of these pieces of content are resources that are either our own in IT organization inside of Intel, or a report that we did about things was how do we position it that this is something we think is going to help you. And we hope that through that helping and solving a pain point that they have, we can make them more successful. And as a result, we are building a relationship with the audience. And Intel's in kind of an interesting position because we don't sell really directly to the audience of IT that we talk to. We sell through partners and things like that. So we can come at it from a kind of a unique voice, but we also have a unique marketing challenge from that same standpoint because we really don't sell something direct. But again, empathy, understand them, and really try to keep your audience at the forefront of what you're creating and trying to communicate. The next insight, we've kind of found over the course of the last 12 months has been with that empathy and understanding is have a really strong heart, have so much passion about this topic and what you're trying to do in your audience that you can fight for them, fight for your audience as you create your content editorial, and be ready to, because I'm going to talk about this in a minute, be ready to experiment and try some different things and be willing to fail and be willing to take feedback. And this was a post that we knew was a little borderline around how it could be perceived by audience. This is a really good video. It just came up at the supercomputing event that was came out. I think it was in November, and we had worked with a company that was doing research around mining the world's oil, and we were highlighting supercomputing technology and its role in helping find oil, right, advance. There's a really cool story here, but inside the video there was also a lot of product heavy and solution heavy and different brands that we were featuring. And so we thought, well, this is a really good story. Let's try it. And we got feedback pretty immediately that, hey, you know what? This isn't really about me. It's about you. And I'm not really sure I like what you guys just did. And so we're very open to hear this feedback. I think it was some of the most valuable feedback we ever got, because it kind of showed us where that line starts to be between it's about them or it's about us. And it's really important that as you go forward and using tools in social or content marketing, that you kind of understand where your audience lives, and how they feel, and be open and responsive if they come back and if and when they come back and give you that feedback. The next one is be curious. We do a lot to try to understand our audience and market research, and we pull from stuff around the industry. But in all reality, people are people, and there are very intense times that we're in our jobs and we're trying to be professional and grow our careers, and there's other times that we kind of want to lay back. And this was one of our more successful posts this year, and it was a simple cartoon about some guys in the data center that were ordering servers, and because of unclear communication, we got waiters instead of actual server technology. And this one really was, we just tried something new. It kind of surprised us of how strong it was and the type of engagement we got. And again, it helps us to better understand our audience. So try different things and see how they go. And you'll learn from that as you go forward with your audience and kind of how you want to build your content plan moving forward. The next one, and I've kind of learned this is one of, from a social media perspective, this is one of the first platforms that we've done some paid social on this year as we've been building out our outreach to this audience. We also have historically just done organic updates in social. And what I've learned is that organic and sponsored updates, they work together to help to build and cultivate an audience that you want to reach, through targeting. But we also see very different responses in the way that we see our audience respond to our posts. And as our audience has grown larger, we actually see this, I believe I'm starting to see this diverge a little bit. So people who have been engaged with us, existing followers, respond to our content very differently than people that we're trying to acquire through new followers. And so I think thinking about how and when you apply sponsorship or paid media to posts, think about what that post is trying to do. Think about if it's a good introduction and handshake post, or is it something that is really being curated or created for your core audience. And I think content serves both those purposes, and it needs to. And you might have a content piece that you only want to take out sponsored to acquire new, and there may be ones that you want to do just for your existing audience. So think about that as you develop your content and how you want to use it. And are you meeting people, or are you maintaining a relationship, which is your existing followers?
And I have one thing to add to that, and it's just a general observation that I've seen across companies I've been working with, and some of the research that LinkedIn has done on why people are following companies. People follow companies because they are raising their hand to hear updates about the company. So some of the more company or product or solution specific stuff that might do really well with your followers because they've already opted in may not do as well from a sponsored perspective. So that's one general rule of thumb that I would add to that. If you're trying to figure out where to get started with organic versus sponsored, that's a general guideline that I would throw out there.
That's a good point. I think the most important lesson I've learned in the last 12 months is how to keep the train on the tracks. And so we've been calling this the process and perseverance, and also the kind of people you engage with and internally, and how you outreach, and then the discipline to stay on track. So when we started this, we had a very clear idea of what we wanted to do, how often we wanted to communicate. We knew we wanted to talk about different types of topics in different types of ways. So we established, mixed criteria. And then we also then said, okay, here's who's doing what and why and how they play in. And this person really knows the audience well, and so we want them to react to content. We worked with others that had expertise in content marketing from other platforms. And then we had the folks that were building the content with, hey, here's our message, here's what we want to communicate. And so everyone kind of had this role. We built it for an execution process that was added to both an element of stability as well as agility. Is we actually said we want to have a content editorial calendar that's out 3 weeks in time, and most people thought I was crazy, and they still think to this day I think I'm a little crazy. But what that does is, by knowing what we're executing this week in the 0 week, what we have planned, and to making decisions on what we're going to sponsor next week, what creative work we're doing on these posts in the 2nd week, and what destinations or link content that we want to be promoting in the 3rd week, provides a stability to our calendar that allows us, so when something pops up in the short term that, oh my gosh, we have this new event or this new information we came up, we want to go out with it quickly, we're not throwing out or in the midst of trying to execute what this week or trying to create something this week. So we have stability, so it gives us a flexibility to move some things around. What has challenged us is it seems like every time somebody changes, or even a month goes by, this process likes to fall off the rails. So my guidance is create a strategy, create an execution engine where it's very clear on what you're trying to go do, and revisit that process constantly. Understand what's working for you, what's not working, where is there inefficiencies, where is there angst, and make sure that's transparent across what you're doing, and make sure everyone's bought in, and just continue. Process is the key, in my mind, to a well-run content marketing program.
And then, Chris, because you have this great process and it has worked so well for you, I have a question. How long did it take for you to develop and iterate and come up with what is working for you now?
Yeah, I think when we first started, these principles were always there, Jamie. I think part of it was getting people to understand what it is we're trying to do and why. It probably took us about 2 months to get to, maybe 3, to get to a point where it was we understood what we were doing, we could communicate to others, and we could execute it without a whole lot of thrash.
Got it. However,
I will have to say that over the course of the 6 months that followed that, we've had to come back and revisit this probably on 2 or 3 occasions of, all right, wait a minute, are we still on track? Are we still doing this? Wait, how come we're not doing +3s? Or wait a minute, why are we spending so much time in this current week when we really should need to be focusing on 2 weeks out? And so it's just, is our mix off? And at one point we actually applied almost too prescriptive of a mix. So we want to do X, Y, and Z every week, and we started getting that flexible inside of lead time changing things, and it was like, well, wait a minute, no, we have to add some more stuff because our mix is off. It's like, well, let's give ourselves a break and say, what, the mix is a guidepost, it's not a rule, and so it's okay to be off mix for a week. Let's just figure out how do we get back on it. And so it's kind of a mixture of making sure the process is documented, but don't making the process govern you, but making sure you use the process as a strategic tool.
Cool. I think it's a really great tip. So let's go into, thank you, Chris, for sharing all of that. I have some sound bites that I'm taking away from that for sure. Let's pivot into, because content marketing and updates are really about member first or audience first, let's talk about what people are on LinkedIn to learn about. So LinkedIn has 3 value propositions to our members, which I think are extremely helpful as guideposts for what marketers should be thinking about when they're creating marketing initiatives and campaigns for LinkedIn. The first is identity. We strive to be the professional profile of record, which means that we have incredibly accurate profile data that you can use to make sure that your content reaches just the right people and only the right people. So with on LinkedIn, there really is no excuse to take a very targeted piece of content and send it out to a very broad audience because our targeting capabilities are so rich, and I'll go over that in more detail in a minute. The second is network, helping people grow their network in order to enrich their careers. But beyond that, we are a social network, and while we are a professional network, we are still a social network. And the best piece of advice that I can give a marketer in order to get them to really actually truly engage an audience and start a conversation and break through the clutter is to be human. So many marketers for so many years have been coming at their messages from a brand or a corporate or a company level perspective. But in social media, it's really all about the one-to-one. It's about knowing that you're speaking to a human being and using human being language. And I'll give some examples of that in a minute as well. And then the third is knowledge. We have become a professional publishing platform. People come to LinkedIn expecting content that will help them be better at what they do and to grow their careers and to be just a more enriched person. And so I'm going to go back to what I said before about being helpful and aiming to inspire. So with those three things said, the first about accuracy is about leveraging LinkedIn's targeting data. So somebody had posted a comment about organic versus sponsored and making sure that there's clarity around that. When I say organic, I do simply mean putting out company updates to your existing follower base, kind of that owned presence. And even within your company page, there's targeting available. You can target by company size, industry function, seniority, geography, and language preference, which is incredibly important. Some of the stuff that you want to put out to your followers is only relevant for a specific geo. Some of you have company size breakouts with your products and solutions and your messaging, and you don't have to create multiple pages in order to segment those messages. You can simply do it through targeting your updates to a specific segment of your follower base. There is a minimum number of followers that you have to hit in order to send out a targeted message. My recommended audience size at minimum for a targeted update is 5,000 to 10,000 people. And that just has to do with scale. If you think about, you're targeting 5,000 of your followers, maybe 10 to 15% of them will see the message, and then you have your click-through rate on top of that. In order to get scale of messaging to make it worthwhile to even put the post out there, that's my recommended minimum audience size for a targeted organic company page post. Then when you get into sponsoring the update out to a broader network and putting it directly into the newsfeed of people that are not following you yet, the targeting facets get even deeper. So if you have not run a sponsored update campaign and you're curious about the targeting, it's really easy to check out. You just go to linkedin.com/ads, create a dummy campaign. You don't have to put in any payment information, and then you can start to see what targeting is available. And that gets very granular into what school they went to, what degrees they achieved, what their field of study was. We have basic demographic stuff in there like age and gender, and then we have really amazing stuff like job title and skills and groups that they belong to. So if you're talking about business intelligence or business analytics, you can use title and group and skill to find people that are specifically interested or are experts in that very specific kind of field of business. Now, the major caveat to LinkedIn sponsored targeting is you can go crazy and get too granular, and you won't get reach, you won't get scale, and you'll be spending a lot of time for very minimal return. And so for that reason, the absolute minimum audience size I recommend for a sponsored post is 250,000 people. And it will show you, the tool will show you how many eligible people or how many estimated people it thinks are in your audience that will log in and see your message. And you want to take care that number does not drop below 250,000. It's really better to try for like a million plus. Sounds like a lot of people, but LinkedIn has over 300 million professionals globally using the site, and so a million is actually like a very, very, very small subset of that. So 250,000, absolute minimum. A million is really kind of the ideal minimum that you want to aim for. And that you can do a balance. You can do one campaign that's very targeted to a few people, like that 500,000 range, and then you can do try a second post that's more broadly targeted and see kind of what happens to your returns. And then finally, the second part about being accurate is about being relevant, which means joining the types of conversations that are already happening on LinkedIn. LinkedIn has trending topics reports. There's no self-serve dashboard for this, but if you have a LinkedIn rep, you can always reach out to them and get monthly trending topics reports. I can tell you there are probably 5 to 10 topics that are evergreen topics on LinkedIn amongst all professionals. Things like employee engagement, hiring and recruiting, growth, venture capital, entrepreneurship, but then also online advertising, which just means digital media and especially social. And in some instances, depending on the audience, European Union is really kind of a placeholder for international business and politics and policies that affect that. And cloud computing is huge amongst a wide variety of audiences on LinkedIn for different reasons. And then second, finally, and we'll talk about this again in our tips and tricks, but because you do have the ability to accurately target, you want to try to speak directly to your intended audience. And Chris, do you want to add some color here? Because I know you've had a lot of experience with this.
Yeah, as the community or the followers on our page have grown, we've started to attract different types of demographics, using the LinkedIn targeting and understanding this. And one of the things that we found is that an IT professional is increasingly partnering with their line of business partner on making technology decisions in their enterprise. And so we have built an audience that actually has a mix of both IT and business. And so we really have an opportunity to make sure we're talking to both of them, and sometimes in a more discreet way and other times more in a general way. Our goal is to try to tie them together so that they're aware of it to each other. But this targeting and giving the ability is understanding again who you're trying to reach, make it personal, and with the targeting tools that Jamie's talking about, it provides a pretty unique opportunity for us as marketers, but I think it actually adds even more value from a community and a member standpoint.
Great. So we've talked about being accurate. Let's talk about the social network part of it. Kind of two aspects to this. The first is don't be afraid to get personal. The post that I'm showing here from Sir Martin Sorrell of WPP, we have the publishing, he's an influencer. We have the influencer program and the ability for, thought leaders and business leaders and luminaries to write specifically for LinkedIn. We open that up as an open publishing platform to all members in the U.S. and rolling out globally through the end of the year. But you have the ability to lend your own personal voice and perspective to a topic that you're passionate about. And this one from Sir Martin Sorrell started off as a long-form post that he wrote about, not just about his industry, which he writes about a lot, but about his career. And this is a great way to actually build like a personal relationship and a personal brand. And then WPP went and posted this through their company page ecosystem, so that they're sharing it from a brand perspective, but it's a human voice behind it. And this is it's storytelling. It's a brand storytelling through their employees, and it's a growing trend. And when it is done with authenticity and it's done with transparency, it's incredibly powerful. And then the second is, to Chris's point earlier, and I'll let you chime in here, but be human. Do you want to talk about a little bit more about this, what you started off with earlier?
Yeah, I think because I was talking a little bit about how do you engage your audience, and we found that IT professionals are probably just like all of us, extremely, extremely busy. And how can we make it fun to be engaged with us as a brand? And we've had some pretty good success with this. And so how do you mix in some lighthearted material inside your content? I think is really important because we want our brand to be to be seen as human as well. I think it's important to do and build in your editorial.
Yeah. And then the final point, accuracy and be human, be helpful. Help professionals be more productive. This is a great example from Chris and his team. You want to talk about this post?
Yeah, again, you can kind of see the flavor, and this is reinforcing what Jamie's been saying is, we're putting a point of view out there as, hey, here's a unique piece of information, and here you can go learn more. It's not content that we created. It's a Forrester Research report that is really aimed at, we know this is a key pain point for you. Hey, go take a look at this. We found it useful.
Yeah. And I love this because it's a great example of not just creating your own content, but in a very, very smart way, going out and curating and finding content from other sources that you simply think is kind of right within the sweet spot of what you're trying to say. But it's not just about productivity, it's also about success. So in this example from Adobe Marketing Cloud, it's about inspiring leadership. So everybody on LinkedIn, and Chris, I know you've experienced this within your IT professional audience, but everybody on LinkedIn is aspiring to be a manager or a director or a CIO or an entrepreneur or a leader, regardless of what their existing job title is. Everybody is aspiring to grow and to be more. So stuff about leadership and management and all of that, just tends to do incredibly well because even though there's a ton of it out there, it's exactly the type of perspective that people are coming to LinkedIn for. So let's wrap this section up. I always like to share a key takeaway, and I encourage you to think about your key takeaways from the first part of this presentation. But really, if I can impart nothing else, if you were to drop off right now, it's about the fact that native advertising on LinkedIn is more than just matching the look and feel. It's about matching the context, and that context is professional, inspirational, and aspirational, and helpful. So if you can really think audience first, be professional, aim to inspire, and aim to help, you're going to be headed in a really good direction for some amazing campaigns on LinkedIn in the future. So let's dig in. This is going to be a lot more tactical, and not just thinking about what kind of content to put on LinkedIn, but how to put it out there, because you can have a really great piece of content, and if you don't craft your update in a compelling way, it's going to get lost in the noise of the feed and not get seen. So let's talk about how this next part is equally as important as selecting the right content, and I'll give you some tips on creating a compelling update. The first is the copy. Headlines matter. So this example from Secret Deodorant, the headline is what I think about as the intro copy. Can you recognize when you're burning out? Check out these 8 invisible signs from Oprah.com that you could be on the verge of a meltdown. Now, you don't want clickbait. You don't want to put something out there that seems really important and intense, and then you get to the article and it doesn't measure up. But creating a sense of urgency or using strong language is definitely one way to create a compelling headline. And then the part in bold that says 8 invisible signs you're totally fried, that's what I think of as the title. That's incredibly important, especially on a mobile device, because on a mobile that really is the first piece of copy that's going to pop out in addition to the image. This example, numbered lists, now we call them listicles. They're all over the internet right now. They're all over social. So please try not to go into overkill mode with your listicles. But numbered lists do make content easier to consume. And if your content really can be broken down into 3 key points and you want to promote it that way, it certainly is one way to get engagement. But again, it can start to feel repetitive because there are so many people doing this right now. So use it sparingly, I think, is my advice for the moment. And then another point, ask questions to engage the reader. LinkedIn is a great place to start conversation. People do actually take the time to comment and to comment thoughtfully on LinkedIn, so take advantage of that. Consider starting your post with a question or a quote to hook your reader. And I know, Chris, you've done this successfully in a way, so do you want to add a little color here?
Yeah, I think this has been really, I was just thinking about this as you were talking, Jamie, is while the goal is to have our audience read the post, I actually would much prefer to have them engage with us for a variety of different reasons. Is we can open up that dialogue and have that discussion. It's really the kind of goal of what we're trying to do with the content marketing. One of the things in best practice that we stumbled upon, and when I was looking at the content here, Jamie, it kind of popped out with the making sure the image matches the tone of the post, was read the post out loud. As you're developing the content, have someone read it. if the person is stumbling and they're reading it, your readers are also probably going to stumble as they read the post as well. So just an interesting trick we found. I encourage you to do it. I think you might be surprised by what you find.
Excellent tip. Copywriting is tough. If you don't have a dedicated copywriter, you can very easily make mistakes that can make your post difficult to read. I love that tip. And then, of course, I talked about this at the beginning, not just optimize for mobile, truly think mobile first. It's where, from an organic perspective, you're going to get a ton of engagement from mobile. From a sponsored update perspective, the vast majority of your engagement is going to come from mobile. And so a couple of tips for optimizing for mobile. The first is with the intro copy, where here it says the top 10 cities people are moving to, tends to keep it short, fewer than 150 characters is what our insights team has come up with as that sweet spot. Do make sure that you include a call to action or a link somewhere within the post. And to that point, link posts where you're simply pasting the URL into the update and then editing the copy tends to be more effective for driving mobile traffic than the large format posts where you're attaching an image and then creating that call to action at the top. And then, of course, make sure your landing page is responsively designed. And if you are going to use a reg form, make sure that you put some information, like you give information in order to get information, and make sure that reg form is also responsibly designed and easy to fill out on a mobile device, because if any of you have tried to fill out a form on a mobile device with the mobile phone keyboards, it's such a pain, and you will lose people so fast that way if it's not really built to optimize for mobile traffic. We talked about this before, but speak directly to the audience that you are targeting. It's okay to put your audience in your copy. And in this example from the period, they do it 3 times. They talk about customer service professionals in industry 3 different times as in the post. This is definitely one of the best practices for creating an update that people will know is meant for them and may actually add value to their content experience. Inspire through storytelling. So in this example from Bank of America, and I talked about this with Sir Martin Sorrell, B of A is highlighting one of their employees and using their story in order to help other professionals. And if you can do this, if you have the bandwidth to tap into your internal employees and get their knowledge and get their stories and use that to create your content, it's going to be relevant, it's going to be on point, and it's going to connect with your audience. So we're going to get, actually, let me see here, Chris, because I know you have to jump in just a minute, and there's one more thing that I wanted to get to before I get to the case studies. So within key takeaways, the first is don't forget to make your customers more productive and successful. And the second is be the editor. A/B test your headlines. Shorter tends to be better, but not always. And Chris, I know you had something that you wanted to add to this as well.
Yeah, I think we've done a lot of A/B testing, and I think one of the things to do is we've done it both formally, in that we've actually used some of the direct sponsored content updates to actually side by side simultaneously see how 2 different posts done where you're changing one element. But also I think you see constantly, if you're watching your feed, you're looking at your results, and you establish this, again, the process that says, how do you go back and look at these posts as throughout their life cycle as they're live, and are they getting engagement? Are they getting the engagement you want? And learn from that and realize that there is not a formula, but create your own as you go, because it's going to be a unique experience for what you want to talk about and who your audience is. And there's not going to be, you're probably not going to find someone who has the exact same audience and same kind of goals that you do with your showcase page or with your updates. So find your own way.
Great.
And again, thank you very much, Jamie. I appreciate being on, and I put my contact information again in the chat, and feel free to reach out to me, and apologize I have to leave before the Q&A.
Yep, thank you so much for joining, Chris. Your Twitter handle's up on the screen. You've got your contact information in chat. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, Jamie. Bye-bye.
So finally, and again, this presentation is going to be distributed, and so I won't go over all the points, but I have included a sponsored update best practice cheat sheet in here about optimizing content, managing updates, and optimizing your visuals. So please be sure to check out the presentation and the link that gets sent afterwards. So before we get into Q&A, I'll go back to the success stories. It's always helpful to learn from people that have tried it and have seen some success and try to repeat that or copy that or imitate that. So the first is Adobe, and they were using sponsored updates for branding last year when we first launched this product. And really, Adobe is known for their creative suite. They created a Marketing Cloud Showcase page and sent out regularly very helpful content around just being a marketing professional under the Adobe brand. And we ran a content impact study for them at the end of this campaign. And those who read a sponsored update were 50% more likely to agree that Adobe is shaping the future of digital marketing. So if you do thought leadership content regularly through a sponsored update campaign, it is a very effective way to shape perception. And it's an effective ad unit. Those that were exposed to a sponsored update were 2.5 times more likely to agree that Adobe's message captured their attention than those who just saw the organic update. And so sponsored updates can certainly be used for branding and thought leadership. And to the point of thought leadership, Capgemini is another company that has been running sponsored updates with us for a very long time. But they went all in with content, and they created a content hub called Content Loop in conjunction with one of our content partners, NewsCred. And they did a login with LinkedIn API where every time you come to the site and log in with LinkedIn, the content is customized or personalized for who you are as a professional. And they were blown away by the results. 69% of their content shares happened on LinkedIn. They acquired 100,000 new followers to their page over a relatively short period of time, just through people following based off of sponsored updates and the follow button on the web page. But the engagement, the quote is that the engagement was unprecedented, nothing that they had ever seen using any other traditional B2B marketing campaign. So I think that's kind of the point here is LinkedIn is a very unique place, and Chris had called this out before about wanting to engage and create dialogue and create conversation. LinkedIn is a very unique place to do that because you have your professional identity tied to your comments. And so the kind of trolling and spam that you see across the web on just about any other platform tends to really not happen as much, be minimized, or not even happen at all on LinkedIn, depending on the audience and the reach that you're getting. And then finally, we all love branding and content and thought leadership and top-of-funnel stuff, but most marketers are also responsible for driving bottom-line business results and lead generation. And so this is a great case study from HubSpot. HubSpot, of course, is an amazing inbound marketing content creator. So they were an early adopter of sponsored updates and using it for their own lead gen efforts. And again, they were blown away. They saw 400% more leads with their target audience on LinkedIn than they did on any other platform that they were running on. And again, they create super helpful content, super valuable content. They invest a lot in what our content marketer calls big rock content, where they create like research reports and ebooks and ultimate libraries and ultimate guides, and then break that up into smaller pieces, and they have a lot of success with that. So we talked about key takeaways, and so now we can actually open it up to Q&A. So let me go ahead and open up the Q&A panel, and I will try to get to everything within the next 15 minutes or so, and I think we can do that. If I don't get to anything or there's just a very specific question that you want to ask and you're not on WebEx, my Twitter handle is @JamieLynn09, and that will also be in the deck that gets sent around after the recording, and the hashtag is LinkedIn content. So if you can't find me directly, use the hashtag LinkedIn content, and I'll try to monitor that throughout the rest of the day today. So let me go ahead and go through the Q&A here and see if I can get to some of the questions that have not been already addressed. So I know there was one about the 411 rule that I had mentioned, and what are the ones? What do those stand for? So the 411 rule really, I think, originally applies to Twitter, and it's for every tweet that you put out there that's self-promotional, you should put out 4 tweets that are not self-promotional and retweet one other piece of content about your topic. Outside of Twitter, I think it's just generally known as the 80-20 rule, which is 20% of your content is about you to some extent, and then 80% of it is just it's about your topic and about your audience. So let me see what else I have here today. Yes, we talked about organic and what that really means and sponsored. Now I have a question here. Is there a way to target people who are looking for new opportunities? So if you have a product that is great for job seekers, you're not sure how to reach them specifically on LinkedIn. Outside of sponsored updates, if you're actually running a campaign like a display campaign or an email campaign with a rep, we do have a job seekers target audience that you can run. And I'm sure it's on their roadmap to be included in sponsored updates. From a sponsored update perspective, I mean, the only thing that I can say is that everybody on LinkedIn is a passive candidate. It's what we call a passive candidate. It's you're actively employed and maybe you're not unhappy with your current career or your current job, but should that dream job come along, it's still a great place to reach out. And so stuff like resume advice or interview advice always does well on LinkedIn, because even though really the vast majority of professionals on LinkedIn are not active job seekers, everybody is a passive candidate. And stuff like interview tips or resume tips are always helpful, because you never really know when you're going to continue to grow your network and explore new opportunities. And then I have another question from Greg. You say we should speak directly to our audience, but if you target 250,000 people or greater, that doesn't seem like it can be personal. So, yeah, I'm not talking one-to-one communication and speaking directly to your audience. I'm talking about the fact that, if you think about the majority of posts that you see in your news feed, if you think about how cluttered the news feed can get, what really can make a post stand out, if you're as a reader, as a member, is understanding that somebody put something out there specifically for you. So in one of the examples, it was marketers need this tool, or how to be successful in customer service. As a marketer or as a marketing consultant, if I'm looking through my news feed and something says marketers, I think, oh, that's me. Maybe I'll take a look at this to see if it's valuable. So that's really that's one of the points that I'm talking about speaking directly to your audience, is make sure you call out the fact that, yeah, I'm trying to talk to you, you're a marketer, or you're an IT pro, or you're in transportation, so that they know that the content really is intended for them, and there's a greater chance that it'll actually have some value for them. And then I have one more question here so far. What's a best practice for A/B testing? Do you test sharing the same content twice, same day, different days, different times? Okay, so organically through organic company page, there's a couple of different ways that you can kind of tweak the system to do some A/B testing. The first is, if you have a lot of followers, to use some targeting in the organic update to keep the sample size relatively small. So maybe you're hitting 5,000 people. And then you can send it out the same day, and the chance of hitting the same person twice is minimal. But another thing that I've seen is, look, only you have to look at your own company page analytics, but 100% of your followers are not seeing 100% of your messages every day. We do have a pretty good organic reach compared to other social platforms, but even then, if you send something out at 8 a.m. and then you send the same post out at 5 p.m., the overlap between the people that are going to see both posts is incredibly, incredibly small. I know I've seen from even LinkedIn company page in the past, we have sent out the same update more than once in the same day, or we'll do 8 a.m. one day and 5 p.m. the next day. The overlap is going to be small. So I think if you limit your audience to 5,000 to 10,000 people, and you vary the times of day that you send out the posts, you can do some effective A/B testing without actually spamming your audience. From a sponsored perspective, and actually, even if you don't have a ton of budget, you can still do really effective A/B testing with what we call direct sponsored content, which is simply it doesn't exist on the company page. You create the update in the ads tool, and it goes out it goes out to the newsfeed of your target audience without showing up on your company page. And what this does is it allows you to do effective A/B testing, because you can reach out to your broad audience. You can run something for 5,000 impressions, get a really good sense of what that engagement rate is going to be, and then run just different variations of that same content or that same update for very little budget. So whatever your audience is, whatever your CPM range is in the auction system, you don't actually have to run that many impressions or spend that much money on a test. You just have to actually actively manage it and set your daily budget and pull it down after it hits that threshold. But if you have somebody if you're really bent on getting better engagement from your updates, spending just, a few $100s in this all-serve tool on some A/B testing can give you some really meaningful results for very little budget. I have another question here from Jen Day. If you do not have a careers page, is there a suggested best practice for frequency of job postings through company updates? Yeah, I think, the frequency of any update is a question that I get often. And from an organic reach perspective, just reaching the maximum amount of followers that you can without diminishing returns, I would say twice a day is optimal, 1 to 2 times per day. If you don't have the bandwidth to do that and you can only post 4 times a week, that's fine too. I wouldn't recommend anything less than 3 or 4 times a week, really, because of the fact that there is an increasing amount of content out there, because content marketing is such a hot trend, that you want to make sure that you're out there and you're relevant. So 3 to 4 times per week is the minimum, but 1 to 2 times daily is perfectly fine, and you won't really be spamming your audience at all at that point for the most part. And then in terms of like job postings versus other types of postings, I would take your most important job openings, especially the ones that are like hardest to recruit for, and put them up there. Make sure that they are on your company page, so that when people visit your company page, it's there. Because people follow company pages for a number of reasons. One of them is career opportunities and jobs, especially if you have a really strong talent brand and you're a company that people tend to want to work for. You're going to get a lot more followers looking for that kind of content. And then any tips on increasing followers to a LinkedIn Showcase page? Yes, there are a few ways to do that. The first is through a paid follower campaign. So if you have budget and a LinkedIn rep, you can run what we call like social ads or spotlight ads in order to get a very targeted audience of followers to follow your page. Sponsored updates are one way to increase your follower base. About 10% of clicks to an update, a sponsored update, will happen on that follow call to action. So your sponsored update should be designed to, engage and move people through the funnel, but it is another way to get followers to your page. And then finally, from just an organic perspective, there's a follow plugin that you can put on your owned properties, your website and your email communications and anything else that goes out to existing or prospective customers. And that plugin is super simple. It's just a little piece of code, and it's available at developer.linkedin.com. So developer.linkedin.com, there is a follow company plugin that you can and should put on any other page that attracts, where you're driving traffic and attracts a similar audience to the one that you want to acquire on your Showcase page. And then what is the pricing for targeted audiences? Okay, so within sponsored updates, the pricing varies all the time. It's an auction-based system, and it's dynamic, and it's based on supply and demand. And it's also and because it's based on supply and demand, part of it is audience size. So typically, the smaller the audience size, the higher the price is going to be, but also how in demand is that audience within the ecosystem. So a lot of B2B companies are targeting IT professionals or small business or CXOs. Those like high demand audiences are going to tend to see higher prices. Because it's dynamic, I can't even really give you an accurate range. But one way to find that out is to go to linkedin.com/ads. Start to create a campaign, enter your desired target audience, and it will give you a suggested bid range, and that will be your baseline for what the CPM or CPC is going to be, because you can bid on either pricing model. There's a few more minutes here. What services can LinkedIn offer to reach audiences that we are trying to reach, and how much does this cost? Huge question. You can go through a rep and do banner ads and sponsored in-mail and sponsored updates and a whole host of other things. We also just acquired Bizzo, so our nurturing and funnel capabilities are going to massively expand early next year. And then there's sponsored updates and kind of LinkedIn self-serve ads. There's two types of ads that you can run without having a LinkedIn sales rep, and those can be found at linkedin.com/ads, both of those. And then I have one question about specs. So I've had some difficulty finding the ideal dimensions for images and direct sponsored updates. Can you point me in the right direction? Yes, Michelle Stute, can you find me on Twitter and send me that question, and I will follow up with a link to ad specs, because I don't have it handy right now, but I know we just updated them, so I can send those over to you after the call. And then finally, all these recommendations seem to be for companies with very large followings. Any suggestions for a smaller company and building an audience? Yeah, absolutely. The first is that follow plugin that you can put on your website for building your audience. I know a lot of the smaller companies that I've talked to will maybe social and content distribution is like on social is like a tiny portion of their budget, but they're spending a ton of money on email marketing or event marketing. So just make sure that you're putting that LinkedIn social presence option on all those other places where you're spending money. Put it in your email, put it on your website, put it on, the slides that you're presenting at your event. They have to be integrated, and you have to make sure that everything that you're doing is cross-channel. You have to give your audience a way to engage with you in a way that they're most comfortable. And part of that, I don't know, I call it fishing where the fish are. Part of that is just understanding that the LinkedIn audience is massive and is engaged, and so making sure that people know where to find you on LinkedIn and sending out updates that are engaging to them on a regular basis and keeping them engaged is super important. Because I've seen companies go from very few followers to a lot of followers just by putting out really relevant content on a regular basis. Because there's a viral component. You may be only reaching 10,000 people, but if you can get even a 1% or a 2% share rate on each of your updates, your viral reach or your earned reach is going to expand faster than you know what to do with it, and people are going to start clicking through to your company page and following your company organically, in addition to that plugin that I mentioned and all your other efforts. So we are at the top of the hour. So I think just a couple more questions that I haven't been able to get to. We are going to, I'm going to copy this Q&A transcript, write a follow-up blog post. My Twitter handle is on the screen. Please feel free to shoot me any additional questions directly through Twitter, and I'll check up on those later this afternoon. And, of course, the recording will be sent out afterwards. So thank you, everybody, for joining. I hope you got a lot of really helpful information out of this. Have a great holiday season. Bye-bye.